Before we
You don't
start,
belong
tell
here.
me one thing. Where are you watching from? Drop your city below, because every story like this starts in one place and could happen anywhere. Now let's
Hold it right
talk
there,
about
sir. I
justice
told
that
you,
doesn't
you're not permitted
shout.
past this point.
It stands.
Did you see the look on his face?
You don't belong here. The words didn't echo. They detonated. They sliced through the air inside the Manhattan Real Estate Expo.
You told the wrong man
sharp
he
as
doesn't
glass
belong
under
here.
pressure. Heads turned. Whispers spread like ripples through the marble hall. A black man in a charcoal sweater and clean white sneakers stood at the VIP registration line. Calm, composed, hands in his pockets. The security guard stepped forward. His tone carried that quiet kind of certainty only privilege can buy. "Sir, this area is for investors only." "And I'm here to invest," the man replied. The guard smirked. "Then you're in the wrong building." The silence that followed was heavy, cold, echoing, merciless. A woman in pearls shifted away. A man in a navy suit let out a quiet laugh. They didn't see arrogance in his stillness. They saw defiance. But the truth was simpler. Malcolm Reed didn't need to raise his voice to command a room. He looked around, at the banners promising billion-dollar dreams, at the crowd scanning badges like passports to importance. He had walked these halls before, once as a janitor's son, once as a dreamer locked out of rooms like this. Now he was here again. Different suit. Same bias. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit that like button and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now back to Malcolm Reed. The guard motioned aside. "I'm going to have to ask you to step away from the VIP line." Malcolm tilted his head, calm but sharp. "Because? You're not on the list," the guard said flatly. Behind the desk, the clerk barely looked up from his tablet. "If he doesn't have a gold badge, he's not supposed to be here." Simple as that, the man didn't argue. He just stood there, steady, grounded. His voice, when it came, was quiet enough to make people lean in. "Funny thing about lists, they're only as accurate as the people running them." The clerk scoffed. "Look, buddy, this isn't a public event. It's for real investors. You can check out the community booths downstairs." A laugh rippled through the line. Someone whispered, "Bold of him to even try." But Malcolm's face didn't change. He wasn't here to defend himself. He was here to observe, to see how far the bias still reached when money didn't wear a suit. Then came the final push. The guard stepped closer. "Sir, I'm not going to ask again. Leave the line. You're making guests uncomfortable." Uncomfortable. That word never described behavior, only skin. Malcolm looked down for half a second. He remembered another lobby, another uniform, another day when he'd walked away. But not this time. Not today. He straightened, eyes locked on the guards. "If comfort is all this room values," he said quietly, "then you're about to lose it." He took a single step forward, measured, calm, inevitable. And in that moment, the air shifted. The world began to tilt in his direction. The crowd shifted back to normal chatter, but the air hadn't recovered. It was fractured, the kind of silence that hums with judgment. Malcolm Reed adjusted his sleeve, not out of nervousness but control. He'd learned long ago that restraint unsettled people more than rage. The guard was still watching him, waiting for some kind of reaction, a raised voice, a mistake to justify the prejudice. But Malcolm gave him none. He turned toward the banner above the grand atrium. Empire Realty Expo, where visionaries build tomorrow. The irony almost made him smile. He scanned the registration desk again, a sea of tailored suits and glossy confidence. Every handshake in this room had a price, every name tag a hierarchy, and right in the middle of it stood him, the man who owned the very roof they stood under. What no one knew was that Reed Capital Holdings had quietly purchased the Harborview Convention Center 6 months ago. The acquisition papers still bore his signature. He hadn't told the Expo board, not yet. He wanted to see what people did when they thought he was nobody. That's why today he came alone. No chauffeur, no assistant, no security detail. Just him, a phone, and a curiosity sharpened by years of being underestimated. "Morning, sir. Are you with one of the local agencies?" The question came from a woman at the coffee bar. Bright smile, polite tone, but her eyes scanned his shoes before meeting his face. He met her gaze steady. "Something like that." "They're strict about badges this year," she added. "They don't want the floor getting crowded." "Good to know," he said softly. Crowded rooms reveal who thinks they own the air. She blinked, unsure whether he was joking. He wasn't. At that moment, an older white broker brushed past, bumping Malcolm's shoulder without apology. The man laughed to his colleague. Didn't know they let walk-ins up here now. Malcolm watched him go, calm, calculating, absorbing every word like evidence. He'd seen this pattern all his life. It always started with tone. Then came distance. Then dismissal. But what they never understood, what they still didn't, was that his silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Across the room, a young event staffer named Lena Torres watched everything unfold from behind a monitor. She recognized the name from the VIP list she'd checked that morning. M. Reed, Platinum Sponsor Tier. It couldn't be coincidence. She leaned toward her supervisor. "Hey, I think that's not your concern, Lena. Stay focused on check-ins," the man cut her off. Lena froze, her jaw tight. Something in her gut told her this wasn't right. Meanwhile, Malcolm moved toward the exhibition floor. Cameras flashed. Conversations buzzed around him. Every step he took drew glances, some curious, some cautious. And then came a voice, smooth and dismissive. "Excuse me, sir, this section's for featured investors only." Malcolm paused mid-step. He turned toward the speaker, a man in a cobalt suit with a laminated tag reading Director of Partnerships. "That's so?" "Yes," the man said with a practiced grin. "This is where our major players gather." "Good," Malcolm replied evenly. "Then I'm exactly where I need to be." The man's smile faltered. "Do you have proof of registration?" "No," Malcolm said. "I have ownership." The man blinked, confused. Malcolm's phone buzzed in his pocket. A single notification from his assistant, Carmen. Board logged in. Slave monitoring active. He didn't check it. He didn't have to. The test had begun. The energy inside the Expo shifted again, subtle at first, then sharp. What began as curiosity was turning into performance. People love a scene, especially when they think they're not in one. Malcolm walked the carpeted aisle between luxury booths, past banners flaunting high-rises and oceanfront towers. But the eyes weren't on the models of glass and steel. They were on him. On his skin. On his stillness. A group of junior brokers whispered near the refreshments table. One leaned in with a smirk. "Man, who let maintenance in this early?" Another chuckled. "Probably lost. Or pitching some crypto startup." Their laughter was quick, nervous, and the kind that needs an audience. Malcolm heard every word. He didn't react. He'd learned that ignorance, when unchallenged, exposes itself faster. At the check-in counter, the registration clerk still had his eyes on him, too. The clerk spoke into his headset, voice low but not low enough. "Yeah, he's still on the floor, no badge." "Security's watching." Across the hall, Lena Torres frowned. She pulled up the internal roster again, and there it was, highlighted in gold. Reed Capital Holdings, Platinum Sponsor, Main Hall Leaseholder. Her pulse quickened. She turned to her supervisor. "That man they're talking about, he's literally the top sponsor." The supervisor didn't even look up. "Don't get involved, Lena, just do your job." "But that's an order." She bit her lip and sat back, but her eyes never left Malcolm. Meanwhile, at booth 204, a slick-haired developer named Evan Burke spotted him and grinned to his team. "Watch this," he muttered, straightening his tie. He approached Malcolm with a swagger that dripped salesmanship. "Hey, my man. Great hustle being here, but this is private territory. Gotta keep the energy clean, you know?" Malcolm turned his head slowly. "Clean?" "Yeah," Evan said, laughing a little too loud. "Investors only. You probably want to check downstairs and get a small business showcase or something." The group behind him snickered. A few phones came out, not openly recording, just that sly angle of modern judgment. One of them whispered, "This is about to go viral." Malcolm's eyes flicked toward the camera lens for half a heartbeat, then back to Evan. "You should be careful where you point that," he said quietly. "Why, afraid of the spotlight?" "No," Malcolm replied. "I own the lights." The chuckle stopped. Evan's grin stiffened. "You're funny," he said, recovering fast. "But seriously, people here pay for access. You can't just walk in." Malcolm's tone didn't change. "Who said I walked in?" Behind them, the guard from earlier reappeared, radio in hand, scanning the scene. He nodded at Evan, then stepped closer. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the restricted area." "Restricted?" The word carried weight it didn't deserve. It was always the same vocabulary. Polite prejudice dressed as policy. Lena watched the moment from the desk, tension crawling up her spine. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, unsure if she should intervene. And then it happened. The thing Malcolm had been waiting for. The guard reached out just enough to guide him by the elbow. That small familiar gesture, half helpful, half removal. The trigger moment. Every conversation nearby paused. The air tightened, charged like before a thunderclap. Malcolm didn't pull back. He didn't raise his voice. He just said one sentence, quiet, precise, deadly clear. "You're touching someone who owns this building." The guard froze. Evan blinked. The phone stopped pretending to hide. Across the hall, Lena whispered under her breath, "Oh my God." The first fracture in the room's confidence had appeared. And Malcolm, calm, composed, deliberate, stepped into it. The moment froze like a photograph. Every breath in that room waited for permission to move again. The guard's hand hovered midair, unsure whether to release or retreat. Evan's grin had evaporated, replaced by that uneasy look of a man realizing he'd picked the wrong audience. The crowd didn't know what to do, half disbelief, half fascination, and at the edge of it all, Lena Torres felt her heartbeat pounding against her ribs. She'd seen the name. She'd verified it twice, and now she was watching injustice unfold against the man who literally signed her paycheck. Her supervisor leaned closer, whispering, "Don't stare, Lena, it's not our business." "It is now," she muttered under her breath. She pulled up the digital dashboard on her monitor, the master sponsor sheet. Every exhibitor's profile, every booth lease, every signature. There it was again in gold. Reed Capital Holdings, main facility owner. She blinked twice, then looked back up toward the crowd forming around booth 204. The guard stepped back, face tightening. "You're saying you own the building?" "That's what I said," Malcolm answered. His tone was light, factual, not boastful. A few laughs rippled through the onlookers, the kind that masks disbelief. Someone whispered, "Yeah, right." Another muttered, "This guy's delusional." Phones tilted up again. The moment was trending before it was even understood. Lena stood. She didn't plan it, her body just moved. "He's not lying." The words weren't loud, but in the sudden hush they carried like a shout. Every head turned toward her. Even Malcolm looked curious. Her supervisor hissed, "Sit down." But she didn't. "His name is on the sponsor list," she continued, voice trembling but steady. "Malcolm Reed, Reed Capital Holdings. He's not just registered, he's the top sponsor. The one who paid for this whole event." Evan's mouth fell open. The guard looked lost, glancing toward the registration desk as if the computer might save him. "That can't be right," he muttered. "Check it," Lena said louder now. "Page 1. Platinum tier." The clerk at the desk hesitated, then clicked through the system. His face drained of color. "She's right," he said quietly. "He's listed as ownership partner for the venue." The hum of disbelief rolled across the room. Cameras flashed, recording the twist as if collective shame had suddenly become content. Evan tried to recover, voice cracking with a fake laugh. "Well, that's news to us. Must have been some kind of miscommunication." Malcolm met his eyes, calm as ever. "No miscommunication. Just misjudgment." The guard stepped back completely now, eyes dropping to the floor. "Sir, you were doing your job," Malcolm interrupted. "Just not the right one." He turned to Lena, still standing by the desk, visibly shaking. "Thank you," he said softly. She swallowed hard. "I just told the truth." "That's how change starts," Malcolm replied. Across the hall, murmurs grew louder, half applause, half awkward silence. Some people clapped. Others lowered their eyes. The facade of confidence that had filled the Expo minutes ago was crumbling under the weight of clarity. And yet Malcolm didn't bask in it. He simply took a step forward, reclaiming the space that had tried to erase him, the kind of step that said, "I belong here, not because you allow it, but because I earned it." From the back, a voice shouted, trying to regain control. "Security! What's going on here?" But it was too late. The truth was out. The first crack in the wall had become a fissure, and for the first time that day, the room wasn't staring at a black man they thought didn't belong. They were staring at power, quiet, undeniable, and standing right in front of them. The truth was out, but not everyone could handle it. Some people, when their pride breaks, reach for anger like a weapon. Evan Burke was one of them. His cheeks burned red beneath perfect lighting. Cameras were still pointed his way, and his carefully curated confidence was bleeding out in real time. "All right, enough of this circus," he snapped. "You can't just walk around claiming ownership without..." "Without what?" Malcolm asked, tone quiet but cutting. "Without permission?" The words landed like a slow clap. Every syllable calm, every silence deliberate. But Evan couldn't stop himself. He needed control back, even if it meant doubling down on humiliation. He reached forward, just slightly, as if to guide Malcolm back toward the exit. "Sir, I'm asking you to leave the area before we have you escorted." The touch was small, almost nothing. But it carried history. Malcolm didn't move. He didn't even blink. For a second, the entire Expo disappeared, replaced by a memory buried deep but never gone. He was 26 again, standing outside a marble lobby in downtown Atlanta. Same tone, same hand on his arm. The loan officer who'd told him, "This property's too much for someone like you." He'd smiled back then, too, because he didn't have the power yet. Not then. He remembered the sting of walking away, the way the doors had closed behind him like judgment, and how that night he'd made himself a promise. The next time someone tried to shut me out, they'd be standing in my building when they did it. The flash of memory faded. Back in the present, Evan's hand was still resting on his sleeve, an echo of that old disrespect. "Remove your hand," Malcolm said softly. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Evan hesitated, then pulled back, scoffing for the crowd. "You think a little drama makes you powerful?" Malcolm stepped forward, calm but immense. "Power doesn't need drama. It just needs receipts." He turned his head slightly, speaking into the air. "Carmen!" The phone in his pocket vibrated once. "I'm here, sir." Her voice came through the small earpiece, crisp, professional. "Initiate internal verification. Expo staff credentials, vendor logins, security chain of command. Full audit, timestamp this moment." "Already running," she replied. "You'll want to stay near the central booth. The board's online." Evan looked around, confused. "Who are you talking to?" Malcolm met his eyes. "Someone who doesn't assume." The surrounding crowd shifted again, murmurs turning into ripples of awe and unease. The clerk behind the counter whispered, "He's really doing it. He's calling corporate." Lena stared at her monitor as lines of data flickered across the screen. Protocol 5, ownership verification, active. Malcolm looked back at Evan, expression unreadable. "You touched me to move me out of a space I already owned. You called it procedure." "I didn't mean..." "You did," Malcolm interrupted. "You just didn't think anyone would hold you accountable." He took a slow breath, the kind that steadies before the strike. "So here's your accountability." He tapped once on his phone. A nearby screen, the Expo's main digital banner button flickered. Then a name appeared across 20 feet of LED light. Property managed by Reed Capital Holdings. The crowd gasped. Evan took a step back. The guard whispered something into his radio, eyes wide. What is this?" Evan stammered. "Transparency," Malcolm said. "You wanted proof. There it is." The flash of humiliation had returned, but this time, it didn't belong to him. Lena covered her mouth, whispering, "He really owns it." The supervisor beside her muttered, "We're finished." Malcolm turned, scanning the crowd, and his tone low, steady, unshakable. "Every time you measure worth by appearance, you bankrupt your integrity." He looked back to Evan, who was still frozen. "And in real estate, that's the most expensive thing you can lose." The Expo was silent. Not empty, but stripped bare of arrogance. You could hear the hum of the air vents, the faint buzz of electricity, the sound of power shifting hands, and in that silence, Malcolm Reed stood exactly where he'd promised himself he would be, unmoved, unapologetic. The storm had come full circle, and this time, he didn't walk away. The screen above the Expo floor still glowed with those 6 words, "Property managed by Reed Capital Holdings." No one moved. No one spoke. Malcolm didn't need to raise his voice. He simply was the voice now. Evan stood rigid, clutching his tablet like a shield that wouldn't save him. The guard looked small, suddenly aware that his badge carried no authority here. And Lena, still at the front desk, couldn't decide whether to sit or stand. The atmosphere wasn't heavy anymore. It was suspended. Malcolm took out his phone, thumb hovering over the glass like a conductor about to cue the orchestra. Carmen, he said quietly. Online, came her voice crisp in his earpiece. Begin internal review, Malcolm ordered. Cross-check every staff credential, access badge, and vendor under Expo management. Flag all violations tied to discriminatory conduct. A short pause. Then Carmen's voice again, calm, professional, relentless. Confirmed. System active. The board's connected remotely. Would you like them to monitor live? They already are, Malcolm replied. That sentence landed like thunder muffled by marble walls. Someone near the registration desk whispered, "The board? He means our board?" Across the hall, one of the senior managers, gray suit, perfect posture, began weaving through the stunned crowd toward Malcolm. "Mr. Reed," the man started, voice high with panic. We weren't informed you'd be attending today." "That was the point," Malcolm said evenly. The man's smile was tight, apologetic. "There's obviously been a misunderstanding. I assure you, our staff didn't mean any disrespect." "Don't explain it to me," Malcolm interrupted softly. "Explain it to the system. It's recording everything." The manager froze. "Recording? Video, audio, transaction logs, and staff behavior audits." Carmen's voice cut in from Malcolm's speaker. "Real-time data feed engaged." Evan swallowed. "You're actually recording us?" Malcolm looked at him, not angry, not smug, just factual. "No, you recorded yourselves. I just made sure the truth had somewhere to live." The room felt smaller now. Even the ceiling lights seemed to dim, as if ashamed of what they'd just illuminated. Malcolm's gaze swept over the cluster of onlookers. "Every time this happens," he said quietly, "there's a meeting later, apologies, statements, promises. But those never fix what's broken. They just cover it with PR." He took one deliberate step closer to the main stage, his voice carrying now, smooth but commanding. "This time the fix is structural." He glanced at his phone again. "Carmen, initiate Protocol 5. Restrict internal access for all on-site management until the audit's complete." "Running it now," she confirmed. Across the lobby, phones buzzed. Staff members looked down at their devices. Access temporarily revoked. System review in progress. The sound of notifications cascaded through the room like digital rainfall. Even Lena's screen flashed red before switching back to green. Verified exempt. She looked up at Malcolm, eyes wide. He gave a slight nod, acknowledging her courage earlier. "Sir?" the gray-suited manager stammered. "We can resolve this privately." "Privately is where you hide things," Malcolm said. "This stays public, because that's where the damage was done." A murmur of agreement spread among the attendees, small at first, then stronger, a tide turning toward him. Someone in the back shouted, "He's right." Another voice followed, "Let it play out." Evan tried again to salvage his pride. "You're making a mistake exposing this. Bad for business." Malcolm's answer came like a blade drawn slow. "Integrity is the business," Carmen's voice returned in his ear. "Audit live and stable. Press coverage window detected. External feeds recording. You have full control." "Good," Malcolm said. "Then let's make this count." He slipped his phone back into his pocket and turned to face the room. "Every building stands for something," he said. "Brick by brick, choice by choice. This one will stand for accountability." For a beat, the world was still again, the kind of silence that only power earns. And in that stillness, the hierarchy flipped. Malcolm Reed wasn't a guest anymore. He was the foundation beneath their feet. The glow from the overhead screen cast long, trembling reflections across the polished marble floor. Phones were up. Cameras live. Every eye in that hall fixed on one man standing calm in the storm he had quietly created. Malcolm Reed didn't move right away. He let the silence breathe. In every second of quiet, the old order crumbled a little more. The senior manager broke first. He cleared his throat, a nervous cough that echoed far louder than he intended. "Mr. Reed, if we'd known you were here." Malcolm turned his head slowly. "You'd have acted differently." The man blinked. "Well, yes, I suppose. That's the problem." The words weren't shouted. They just cut clean, precise, undeniable. You could feel the collective wince travel through the room. Evan Burke, still gripping his useless tablet, tried to recover his voice. "Look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot. Nobody meant any harm. This is just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Malcolm repeated, one eyebrow lifting. He took a slow step forward. The crowd opened without being asked. You looked at me and made a decision. That wasn't confusion. That was certainty, the wrong kind. Evan's smirk vanished. The manager's clipboard shook in his hand. And then Malcolm stopped right at the center of the floor, under the massive digital banner now flashing his company's logo. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a slim black badge, not security, not access. The kind of badge that ends debates. He held it up for everyone to see. For the record, he said, voice steady, I didn't just sponsor this event. I own this building. The contracts, the land beneath it, and the doors you tried to shut in my face. The room gasped. A wave of disbelief followed by silence so deep it hurt. Lena covered her mouth. Her supervisor looked ready to sink through the floor. Even the security guard had gone pale, radio limp in his hand. Malcolm glanced up at the glowing banner again, at his own name in bold type. Towering over the Expo's slogan, Where Visionaries Build Tomorrow. He almost smiled. Seems tomorrow got here early. A ripple of nervous laughter broke through, but it wasn't mockery. It was relief. The kind of laughter that says finally, justice sounds like the truth. Malcolm turned back to Evan and the guard, his tone still calm, measured. You said I didn't belong here. He paused, long enough for the cameras to catch every flicker of emotion. You told the wrong man that. The line hit like an explosion. You could feel the shift, phones shaking, people whispering, someone whispering, oh my God, under their breath. It was the kind of sentence that lived beyond the room, destined to echo online for weeks. Evan's lips parted, searching for a defense, but there wasn't one left. Malcolm didn't gloat. He didn't need to. His silence was a crown. You called me a guest, he said finally. But I built the house. And with that, the story stopped being a confrontation. It became a revelation. The crowd wasn't looking at a black man they'd misjudged. They were looking at the weight of their own assumptions laid bare. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Not even Carmen, still monitoring in his ear. Just the sound of camera shutters and the soft buzz of the screen overhead. Then quietly, Malcolm said the words that would headline 1,000 reposts by morning. Respect isn't granted by a title. It's proven by how you treat people when you think they have none. And that was it, the moment the entire room finally understood who was really in charge. For a full minute, the Expo floor stood frozen. The kind of silence that comes right before something irreversible. Then, one by one, the sounds returned. Soft gasps, shuffling feet, the faint chime of phones receiving notifications they didn't understand. On every staff device in the room, a message appeared. Access revoked. Internal review active. Lena's screen flashed again. This time it displayed a new header. System admin, Reed Capital Holdings. The guard stepped back, his earpiece crackling with static. He pressed the button. Nothing. His radio was dead. Evan's tablet went dark. He tapped the screen again and again. What's happening? He muttered. Malcolm didn't answer. He didn't have to. Carmen's voice came through his earpiece, and calm, almost serene. Sir, system lockdown confirmed. Internal access privileges disabled for all non-verified Expo personnel. Status of the staff? Malcolm asked. Management credentials frozen. Security clearance suspended. Lena Torres, exempt verified integrity tag. Good, Malcolm said quietly. The manager in the gray suit took a desperate step forward. Mr. Reed, please, this isn't necessary. We can handle this internally. You already did, Malcolm interrupted. That's the problem. The man opened his mouth again, but his phone buzzed in his pocket. The same alert. His access gone. Around them, the lights dimmed slightly as the system rerouted control. Every monitor, every screen, every display in the hall now carried one simple message in white text on black. Accountability in progress. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Guests who had come to close real estate deals were now witnessing something entirely different. Justice, corporate and immediate. A woman near the front raised her phone, live streaming. We're watching history, she whispered. A CEO just shut down his own building. From inside it, Evan spun toward her. Stop recording, he barked. She didn't. No one did. The energy had changed again. Fear replaced by fascination, tension melting into awe. Malcolm looked around, his tone measured but absolute. Every system has a reset button. Today you found mine. He turned toward the security guard who still stood frozen in place. You followed orders. You enforced someone else's bias. You can decide right now what kind of man you want to be after this. The guard swallowed, nodded, eyes glassy. Yes, sir. Then start by listening, Malcolm said. He gestured toward Lena. You saw the truth when it wasn't convenient. That matters. Lena's voice trembled. I just couldn't watch it happen again. Exactly, Malcolm said. Silence is what keeps systems like this alive. He stepped back, hands clasped behind him. No anger, no gloating. Just quiet control. Carmen's voice echoed softly through the building's intercom now. Professional, neutral. Per CEO authorization, temporary suspension notices have been issued to all Expo management pending review. System privileges will remain locked until further notice. The gray-suited manager's face fell. His phone buzzed again, terminated. Evans did the same. The sound of those digital beeps filled the room like a slow, steady drumbeat of consequences. A small round of applause started somewhere near the back. Then another. Then another. The ripple grew until it filled the hall, spontaneous, cathartic. Not because anyone liked seeing people fired, but because for once accountability didn't come months later behind closed doors. It came now right here in real time. Malcolm didn't smile. He simply nodded once. A quiet acknowledgement that the system had done what it was built to do. He looked toward the banner above him, the same one that once felt like an insult. Now beneath the logo a new message appeared. This building stands for integrity. Malcolm turned to leave, his footsteps steady against the marble floor. Every camera followed him, but he didn't look back. As he passed the entrance, he said one final thing to the room. Low, calm, unmistakably final. Justice isn't revenge. It's maintenance, and with that, he walked out into the afternoon light, leaving behind silence, awe, and a world quietly rewriting itself in his shadow. Outside, the city moved like nothing had happened. Cabs rolled by, horns echoed, sunlight spilled across the glass facade of the Harbor View Convention Center, but inside those doors everything had changed. Malcolm Reed stepped out into the cool November air. His reflection following him in the mirrored windows, the man they'd tried to erase still standing. Calm, composed, unshaken. He stopped at the curb. The breeze carried the distant hum of the Expo behind him. Muffled voices, camera shutters, the rustle of consequence. Carmen's voice came through his earpiece one last time. System stable, sir. Audit filed. Press already circulating the clip. Of course they are, Malcolm said quietly. Truth travels fast when it's been ignored long enough. He crossed the street toward his car, hands in his pockets, posture unbent. He wasn't thinking about the cameras or the applause. He was thinking about the janitor's son who once stood outside buildings like this, wishing for entry. That boy had finally walked through the doors and then bought it. Malcolm paused, looking back once more at the tower of glass now shimmering under the afternoon light. The reflection was almost poetic. The name Reed Capital Holdings engraved at the top, glinting like a quiet promise. A journalist called out from the steps, phone raised. Mr. Reed, any comment on what happened inside? He turned slightly, eyes steady. No comment, he said. Then after a beat, just a reminder. And what's that? The reporter asked. Malcolm's gaze drifted past her, toward the city skyline, where buildings rose like monuments to ambition and oversight alike. I didn't raise my voice, he said. I raised the standard. The reporter lowered her phone, caught between awe and silence. Behind her, a few bystanders began to clap again, soft, uncertain, genuine. Not the applause of spectacle, but of recognition. Malcolm nodded once in acknowledgement, then turned away, walking toward his car as the reflection of the building shimmered behind him like closing credits. In the distance, Carmen's voice came softly through his earpiece. Sir, that was remarkable. No, he said, opening the car door. That was overdue. He slid into the back seat. The city stretched out ahead, tall, loud, alive. The driver glanced in the rearview mirror. Back to the office, Mr. Reed. No, Malcolm said, looking out the window. Back to work. The car merged into traffic. The skyline followed, fading into the haze of late afternoon light. And somewhere in the quiet rhythm of the road, Malcolm allowed himself one final thought. The one that carried him through every locked door. Every insult, every assumption. Dignity doesn't shout. It builds. No revenge, no noise, just justice, done right, done quiet. See you in the next story.